Firstly, thank you all so much for taking time out of your diaries, because I know how everybody is so busy, and joining us on this session, which is looking at maintaining a level of balance using emotional resilience and positive psychology. And I'm going to start off as I usually do. For those who have just joined us, we do about 25-minute presentation, and then we go into a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please hold on until then, but I might actually also ask you to interact on the chat if you don't mind. That would be really wonderful to hear your comments from that. So as I said, today's session is looking at maintaining balance with emotional resilience. And just starting with the story, I'm going to read you something about emotional resilience. So having grown up in a close-knit family in Hertfordshire, England, John, an ordinary man, had no great ambition. He led a comfortable life. He was loved by his family and was naturally optimistic. When he was taken hostage in April 1986 for 5.5 years by the Islamic Jihad in Lebanon, he came face to face with danger for the first time. It was pretty heavy stuff, John recalled. Looking back, it was surprising that I was able to cope. Faced with the real danger and consistent threat of execution, John McCarthy discovered he was able to draw on a remarkable resilience skill set he never knew he had. John had an optimistic disposition. He knew who he was and how much his family loved him. John developed great relationships with fellow captives and even shared a few light moments with them in those 5.5 years when they were all hostages. This strong social and family support, unwavering optimism, and a sense of identity gave him the inner strength to cope and under intense pressure until he was released on the 8th of August 1991. John's inner strength and emotional resilience has stayed with him until this day. And his negative life experiences have not only shaped his career as an author, presenter, and famous media personality, but are also a source of resilience for him. Now, I know that's not related to parenting or ADHD, but it is a beautiful reminder of how even in the most unusually tough situations, we can find resilience within. And this correlates with being a parent and having children who are ADHD, because sometimes you feel like, what am I doing? And this is really, really hard. And hopefully this session will help add a little bit more sense to what's happening and hopefully give you some ideas for what to do if the next time you're feeling under that pressure. So we're going to look at the essence of emotional resilience and navigating parenting children with ADHD and using your resilience, and then nurturing a positive family resilience through applied positive psychology. And we'll end in a Q&A. This is the Cambridge Dictionary definition of resilience: the ability to be happy, successful after something difficult or bad has happened. And resilience comes from the Latin word resilire, which means to jump back, rebound, or retreat. And there's this lovely quote about emotional resilience being the art of living that's intertwined with self-belief, self-compassion, and enhanced cognition. It's the way through in which we empower ourselves to perceive adversities as temporary and keep evolving through the pain and suffering. So I picked up some essences of emotional resilience, and every person is different. So you might feel resilience in a very different way from other people. But ultimately, it could be part of your nature. So you're naturally less upset by challenges or surprises. And this is something that may maintain throughout your life and it remains stable. But it could be related to your age, your gender, your exposure to trauma. And looking at that emotional awareness, this is about being aware of others' emotions. So understanding what emotion feels like to another person and why it happens. So you're very much in touch with yourself and possibly more objective. You are trusting in the process, action orientated. You're trusting in the process and you're not prepared to give up. And you may look at it prospectively. So you might see obstacles as challenges. And often emotional resilience comes with optimism, like what we heard in the story. And that's about seeing positives and staying connected to possibly something higher than yourself. The internal locus of control represents the internal forces that relate to you being in control. So I am in control. The external forces outside me, the things that are happening outside of me, are not in control of me. So it's very solution focused. And some people find that sense of humor, keeping those light moments, as John did when he was in captive, again, just lightens the situation. But you can't underestimate the power of social support. And that's the value of being surrounded and supported by others. And that could be within, inside, or outside of your family. And also looking at that spiritual connection. And not everybody will have this. And this could be just thinking there's something higher than yourself, or you might have a religion that you resonate with. But resilience is thought to relate or involve 3 areas in the brain region. And they are the prefrontal cortex, the bit in front, the hippocampus, and the amygdala. Now, if you are aware of ADHD, you might recognize those parts of the brain as been affected by ADHD. And it's about your emotional regulation. And emotional resilience comes from regulating those emotions and seeing not what's in front of you, but maybe the purpose behind the emotion. And the people that are resilient tend to be more resilient, have greater connectivity between those three areas of the brain. So the hippocampi and the amygdala are less stimulated by the emotional memory. So it's not tapping into it in the same way as maybe if you've got a child with ADHD or ADHD traits, you might find it's very hard for them to control their emotions. And that is a natural consequence of their brain development. So they can't control it. And again, if you've been with me a little while, you also recognize that ADHD in children is more likely to occur as well in adults. So you mightn't be diagnosed, but you might have similar traits. And your child might not have the emotional regulation and the emotional resilience. And you might find it more challenging or difficult to find that emotional resilience in you too. And that just links back to this cycle we spoke about before, how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are essentially linked. And how this might look is, I can't do this, I've had enough, I can't do this. And then that thought is giving you feelings of feeling disempowered, frustrated, helpless. And then you might either shout, outburst, or avoid tasks. And this happens in every human, no matter what brain development stage you're in. So a child, an adult, we all go through these. So what we're trying to do with emotional resilience is strengthen those links. So we are able to pause at a time when we're presented with something that is responding to our natural instinct, and get this cycle moving, thoughts, feelings, behaviors very, very quickly. It allows us to pause and think, okay, how am I perceiving this? What does this mean to me? And how does it make me feel? And then you might be in a position to be able to choose. But to do that, you need to kind of strengthen who you are and look at self-care. And to be able to support your child you need to have this as well. So what we looked at last week is the role model and the mirroring effect. So if we can strengthen ourselves, we're in a much better position to be able to share those insights and strengthen our children's emotional resilience. And quiet reflection and engagement means, again, from last week, we looked at being mindful and being present and aware of in the situation, and taking the storm to somewhere that is quieter and less stimulating, so you have a better chance of maybe managing the emotions that are in front of you, your own or your child's. And if you're looking at your child and they're having quite a visible emotional churn, you may wish to acknowledge it, acknowledge what you're seeing, as opposed to getting emotionally involved in it. So trying to move out of that thinking process and saying, I see that you're upset. I see that because you're crying. I see that this is affecting you emotionally. I'm not sure why this is happening, but I'm sure you'll let me know soon. But it's just labeling those emotions. I see now you're getting angry. I see that you want to hit the cushion, and that's okay. So it's just noticing those things, because that is also breaking their cycle, because what you were in a very calm, meaningful way is just, okay, that is what's happening, because they might not be aware of what is happening. And early intervention, we earlier spoke about, in previous sessions, we spoke about the 90-second rule, that time that the stress hormones are very active in you, and that cycle takes around 90 seconds. But the one thing that keeps those emotions going is the thought process. So if you allow that natural bodily response to those emotions, we can break the thinking cycle, we can break the behavior cycle and catch it much quicker, both in ourselves and our children. And positive can-do attitude and values. Remember your values. As a parent, it's very easy to just see, again, what's in front of you. But think about focusing from what's wrong to what's right. If a child is having a beautifully demonstrated meltdown in front of you, you might appreciate how they are able to express themselves in all their glory, and looking at it just differently, focusing from what's wrong to what's right. And another tool is about delayed gratification. So when a child asks for something and we might give it to them straight away, try and delay those for a little while. Yes, you can have that, but can you just help me with this first? And I can give that to you straight away afterwards. So it's by delaying that the child is learning how not everything is instant. They don't get whatever they want straight away. So it's helping them build their emotional regulation and resilience. And as we spoke about, that parent well-being is absolutely crucial. So there's this lovely quote I've come across quite recently, and it's, I am not what I think I am. I am not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. And I love this quote because it potentially means that how you think others view you may become your reality. So what we see often is our reality, when it's not actually our reality. It's our perception of the reality. It's our view on the reality. It's shaped by our previous thoughts, experiences, our cultural background, all of these things. So watch what your reality is. And having a child with ADHD can invite a lot of judgment from other people. How your child behaves, or if they're not meeting the markers in school, all of this negative input you are getting from other people. And you may start to believe that. And the research suggests that this can evoke a lot of feelings of guilt and shame. And again, if we remember from last week, we spoke about the mirroring effect, how we're showing up. Our children may pick up on those moods and emotions and give us back what they see. Just what different environments do for you, how they affect you, thinking about that cycle. Is there an emotion or a feeling you're getting from certain environments? And that might be just something to observe. But before we go into kind of practical activities, which I love, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Ina Hicks. I'm a positive psychologist and a mom of 2 boys with ADHD. And they present very, very differently, inattentive type and combined type, but they've also got what the academics call comorbid, basically coexisting other conditions, which is very, very common in ADHD, most commonly dyslexia, but also those key markers for autism. But I stopped getting them tested when I was suggested they might have autism. I said, okay, well, is that diagnosis going to benefit them anymore? No, because it didn't. We said, okay, let's draw the line there. They are who they are, and let's kind of work in the best way we can. We use a lot of positive psychology to influence our environment at home and find it incredibly effective. If you don't know what positive psychology is, very simply put, it's a branch of psychology that focuses on what is right with a person as opposed to what's wrong. And traditional psychologies often look at the deficit piece. What's wrong? How did that happen? Where did that come from? So this is like what we understand. Everybody's got their backgrounds and journeys and experiences and adversities. But now let's look at what is great about that person and how can we build on that to move forward. So looking at emotional resilience, there's loads of different ways of explaining emotional resilience. But in this model, I'm looking at 5 key pillars. And they are self-awareness, mindfulness, self-care, positive relationships, and purpose. And these are all drawn from positive psychology. We spoke quite in depth about self-awareness and mindfulness last week. So we're going to look at those self-care, positive relationships, and purpose. So looking at that self-care, if you can, possibly, if you got your hands and you can enter into the chat, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being absolutely nothing, to 5, loads, how much do you do for yourself? So how much self-care do you practice on yourself? You don't mind adding in some numbers, 3 to 5. Brilliant. Thank you, Lindsay. 2. Okay, great. Brilliant. 2. Yeah. So I do often find that when that question is asked, it can be quite low because we're busy and we've got other things on our mind, and a lot of the focus is often on the child. And this is something I'm looking at from an academic point of view at the moment, is we know that children need support and they need a lot of support with their mental health at the moment. And there is a lot of support out there if you can find it and locate it and harness it. But there isn't a huge amount out there for parent well-being. There's resources out there to help you look after your child and help you with, as we've spoken about, how to improve their emotional resilience. But actually, you being able to share those positive interventions with your children, you have to be coming from a place of care. So that's where you love yourself, you care for yourself, and you recognize the value in taking care of yourself. So this is an idea that you could develop. So it's a self-care checklist. And these are areas, what I might do is I might put this in the email that I send out tomorrow so you have something. So these are various different areas. It will change depending on the person. Some of these you might find useful, others you won't. So I would rate these in order of importance. And then I would add the activities that you think would be good to nurture those self-care. So even though we put quality time with family and you think, well, that's not only for me, but it is because it's nourishing you. What is really nourishing you and what is, we're going to speak about in a moment, filling your cup. And you also might then create like a self-care bank. And these might be things that you really enjoy doing, but they just take a short space of time. And also you might find you're doing more self-care and you don't realize it because it's merged with loads of other stuff. So you're actually not really like mindfully appreciating the nice things that you're doing. And just by changing that, by appreciating what you're doing, you're going to feel much more benefit from them. So calling a friend, watching your favorite film, whatever that is. But it's all about filling your cup. So if you imagine this cup is at a 5, every day we want to try and get that cup up to at least a 4. And, calling a friend or watching your favorite film or having a bath or something like that is filling your cup. So think of what you can do to continue to fill your cup every day. The second point is looking at positive relationships. And positive relationships are looking at the bonds we have with others and also ourselves. And it's about creating a much happier and fulfilled, supportive and connected community. And this is all essential for emotional regulation. And there's something I want to talk about, which is this South African philosophical social structure. And it's a Zulu term, Ubuntu. And in certain regions of South Africa, when somebody is doing something wrong, they're taken to the center of the village and surrounded by their tribe for 2 days, while the people around them talk about all the good that they have done. Not the wrong thing, all of the good that they have done. And the belief is that the unity and affirmation have much more power to change behavior than shame and punishment. And this is known as Ubuntu, humanity towards others. So ask yourself the question, what will you do to connect with or find your tribe? And that's the tribe that appreciates you for who you are, that can pick you up, that can focus on the good and tell you how incredible you're doing. The third and final point or activity is purpose. And if you recall back on that story at the beginning, John had a purpose. There's lots of stories as well from World War II and the Auschwitz camps about those who had survived those harrowing 3 years were full of purpose. They had someone to come back to. They had a belief in something bigger than themselves. And purpose is essentially recognition that we belong to and serve something bigger than ourselves. And our purpose helps to shape the mindsets and attitudes we have towards others and the events we experience, exactly like the earlier story. There's a few questions to get you thinking as well. So think about your family purpose. What is your purpose for your family? What are your core beliefs? And what is it you want from yourself within that family? And part of being in that family could be you outside the family. So if your whole purpose is on the family, then think about what might be missing for you, if there's anything missing. Think about what you want for yourself, what you want for your family, and what are you doing to reach these goals? And these kind of questions will reconnect you when you are faced with adversity in front of you, and you may find it really hard to reach for that resilience. But if you can connect to those values, that purpose, then you might see the picture in front of you very differently. So it's just something to ponder with. I'm going to leave you with a quote. Just to remember, when we long for life without difficulties, remember that oak trees grow in contrary winds and diamonds are made under pressure. So there's great value and growth in those more challenging times. And if you maintain connection to those things that can fill your cup, you're going to be much better equipped to face those challenges. If you want to get on a chat with me, I know I spoke to a couple of you, please do book in a virtual coffee with me anytime. I'll also actually put a link in the chat in a minute, but you can scan that code and it's just a chat to see, what are your personal challenges and how is this relating to you and if it's relevant. And, everybody's going to have unique challenges. That's why I love positive psychology so much, because there are so many tools within positive psychology, all with the same aim of kind of lifting you higher and strengthening what's already in you. You will find a match for what's working for you. I have started, and I mentioned this last week, I've just opened up a membership because I was doing a lot of one-to-ones with clients and it was taking a lot of time because there was a lot of demand. So I've created a membership, which you're very welcome to look or have a chat with me about. It is a paid for membership. So it's about a community coming together where you can check in twice a week and just have a chat on anything that's might be challenging you. And then I will show you different resources that you can get hold of. So just to let you know that is there if anybody is interested. Next week, we are going to look at developing a growth mindset. And that is about developing a new language for you and your family. And it's about, remember, we spoke about changing the focus on what is in front of you that's not good and change it for something more growth oriented. So from the deficit model to the growth model. So looking at how we can develop that growth mindset in both yourself and your child. Because remember, let's start with you first. Strengthen that. And then sometimes you won't even need to do any work with your child because just by you showing up in a different way helps them feel stronger. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and I'm going to open up to questions if anybody has any comments.